Jake Harrison had not planned to change the course of his life that morning. He had come to Terminus Station for one simple reason. He needed cheap labor droids to help load cargo on his ship. The Starbound Drifter was a good vessel, but she was old, and Jake could not afford a full crew. Droids were the answer. They did not need food, sleep, or payment. The trade hub was enormous. Thousands of species from across the galaxy walked through its metal corridors. Jake passed merchants selling everything from engine parts to exotic foods. He ignored them all. His target was the equipment auction in Hall 12. But when he checked his navigation pad, he realized he had taken a wrong turn. He stood at the entrance of Hall 7. The smell hit him first. It was the smell of too many bodies in too small a space. The smell of fear and despair. Jake looked up at the sign above the door and felt his stomach turn. This was not an equipment auction. This was the Galactic Slave Exchange. Jake wanted to leave. He was a simple cargo hauler, not a hero. He had no money, no power, and no desire to get involved in the ugly business of slavery. But something made him step inside. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the voice of his dead father in his head, telling him that a man should know the darkness of the universe if he wanted to appreciate the light. The hall was filled with display platforms. On each platform stood beings of different species, all wearing the metal collars of slaves. Buyers walked between the platforms, examining the merchandise like farmers at a cattle market. Some poked at the slaves with scanning devices. Others asked questions about health records and work capacity. Jake moved through the crowd, feeling sick. He had heard about places like this, but he had never seen one with his own eyes. The galaxy was not a kind place. Earth had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and humans were still considered newcomers. They had no power to change the laws of older civilizations. Then he saw them. An entire section of the hall was dedicated to one species. They were tall, much taller than humans. Their bodies were covered in thick scales that ranged from dark green to deep blue. Each of them had 4 arms, and their faces were flat with sharp ridges above their eyes. Jake recognized them immediately. Everyone in the galaxy knew the Cathari. 6 months ago, the Cathari Empire had been one of the most powerful forces in known space. They had ruled over 100 star systems. Their warriors were legendary. It was said that a single Cathari soldier could defeat 10 fighters from any other species. Their empire had lasted for 3,000 years. Then the Valorian Collective came. The Valorians were a coalition of species who had grown tired of Cathari dominance. They united their armies and launched a surprise attack. The war lasted only 4 months. When it ended, the Cathari Empire was gone. Their worlds were occupied. Their leaders were executed. And their surviving warriors were sold into slavery. Jake looked at the Cathari on display. These were not ordinary beings. These were soldiers, fighters, commanders. He could see it in the way they held themselves even in chains. Their bodies were covered in scars from countless battles. Their eyes burned with a pride that refused to die. Most buyers avoided them. The Cathari were dangerous. Everyone knew that. Only the owners of gladiator pits and mining operations wanted them. They would work these proud warriors to death in dark holes or force them to kill each other for entertainment. Jake was about to turn away. When he saw her, she stood on a platform near the back of the section. She was female, shorter than the male Cathari, but still taller than Jake. Her scales were a beautiful emerald green, and her body carried more scars than any of the others. A long wound ran across her face from her forehead to her jaw. Despite everything, she stood straight. She looked like a queen waiting for her subjects to arrive. Their eyes met. Jake felt frozen in place. There was something in her gaze that he could not explain. It was not hatred or anger. It was something deeper. It was a desperate hope that had almost been extinguished, but still flickered like a candle in a storm dawn. She spoke. The translation implant in Jake's ear converted her words into English. Please purchase us, human. Jake blinked. He looked around, wondering if she was talking to someone else. But there was no one near him. The other buyers had moved to different sections. Me? Jake pointed at himself. Yes, you are human. I can tell by your shape and your smell. Please, you must purchase us. Jake shook his head. I do not have money for slaves. I came here looking for droids. I took a wrong turn. The female Cathari did not look away. Then find the money. Borrow it. Steal it. I do not care how. But please, human, you must buy us. Why? Jake asked. Why me? Why a human? She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Because your kind does not break what you own. Humans fix things. Humans care for things. Everyone in the galaxy knows this. A slave purchased by a human will be fed. A slave purchased by a human will be given medicine when sick. A slave purchased by a human will eventually be freed. Jake had never heard this before. He knew that humans had a reputation for being emotional. Other species often called them weak and sentimental. But he had not known that this reputation had spread so far. How many of you are there? He asked. 47 warriors from my unit. We are scheduled for separate auctions across this station. Tomorrow, we will be split apart and sold to different buyers. Some will go to the gladiator pits on Nexa Prime. Others will go to the radiation mines on Korvax. We will die alone, far from each other, without honor. Jake felt a weight pressing down on his chest. I cannot save 47 people. I am just a cargo hauler. I have 12,000 credits to my name. That is nothing. The female Kethari lowered her head slightly. It was the first sign of weakness she had shown. I understand. But I had to try. When I saw you, I felt something. I do not know what it was. Perhaps it was foolish hope. Perhaps it was madness. But I knew I had to speak to you. Jake stood there for a long moment. The noise of the auction hall faded around him. He thought about his father, who had died alone on a distant planet, still believing that one person could make a difference. He thought about his ship, empty and quiet, waiting for a purpose. He looked at the Cathari female. What is your name? I am called Vera Nix. I was once the commander of the Imperial Guard. Now I am nothing. Vera Nix, Jake repeated. I cannot promise anything, but I will try. I do not know how yet, but I will try to find a way. For the first time, something changed in her eyes. The flicker of hope grew just a little brighter. That is all I ask, human. That you try. Jake nodded once and walked away. He did not know how he was going to save 47 alien warriors. He did not have a plan. He did not have the money. But he had made a promise, and Jake Harrison was not a man who broke his promises. The clock was ticking. The auctions would begin tomorrow. Jake found Kyle Bennett in their usual spot. It was a small cantina on the lower levels of Terminus Station, far from the wealthy traders and diplomats who walked the upper decks. The drinks were cheap and the food was bad, but no one bothered them here. Kyle was already on his third glass of something green and glowing when Jake sat down across from him. They had been friends since childhood, growing up together in the poor districts of New Houston on Earth. When Jake inherited the Starbound drifter from his father, Kyle left his job as a military engineer to join him. They had been flying together for 8 years now. You look terrible, Kyle said. Did the droid auction not go well? Jake told him everything. He talked about Hall 7, about the Cathari warriors on display, about the female commander named Vera Nix, who had begged him for help. He talked about the promise he had made, even though he had no idea how to keep it. When he finished, Kyle was quiet for a long time. He stared at his drink and did not meet Jake's eyes. "You know, we cannot afford this," Kyle finally said. 47 slaves. Even at discount prices, we are talking about at least 2 million credits. We do not have that kind of money. We will never have that kind of money. "I know," Jake said, "but I cannot just walk away." You did not see them, Kyle. You did not see the way they looked. These are not criminals or weaklings. These are warriors. They fought for their empire until there was nothing left to fight for. And now they are going to be worked to death in mines or killed for entertainment. Kyle sighed and rubbed his face with both hands. Why did she ask for a human? There are thousands of species on this station. Some of them are much richer than us. Jake leaned forward. That is the strange part. She said that humans have a reputation. She said that everyone in the galaxy knows that humans do not break what they own. She said that slaves purchased by humans get fed, get medicine, and eventually get freed. Kyle looked up. I have never heard that before. Neither have I, but she believed it completely. She was willing to bet her life and the lives of 47 warriors on that belief. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cantina continued its usual noise. Alien languages mixed together. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed at a joke. Jake did not understand. Kyle spoke again. My grandmother used to tell me stories about when humans first met the galactic community. Everyone thought we were primitive. Our technology was centuries behind the other species. Our bodies were weak compared to races like the Cathari. We had nothing to offer. I remember those stories, Jake said. Everyone expected us to be conquered or ignored. But that did not happen, Kyle continued. Instead, something strange occurred. Humans started buying things. Ships, equipment, droids, and yes, slaves too. But we treated everything differently. We named our ships like they were family members. We repaired old droids instead of throwing them away. We gave our servants actual wages and let them leave if they wanted to. Jake nodded slowly. The other species thought we were insane. They still think we are insane. But here's the thing. The species we treated well started to love us. Freed slaves became loyal employees. Repaired droids became devoted assistants. Species that everyone else exploited became humanity's strongest allies. We built an empire not through conquest, but through kindness. Jake had never thought about it that way before. Growing up on Earth, he had always heard that humans were weak and sentimental. Other species mocked them for caring too much. But maybe that caring was not a weakness. Maybe it was the greatest strength humans had. So the Cathari know about this, Jake said. They know that a human owner is their best chance for survival. It makes sense, Kyle replied. If I were a slave, I would want a human master too. At least with a human, there is hope. Jake slammed his hand on the table. Then we have to help them. We cannot let them be sold to the gladiator pits and the mines. If the galaxy believes that humans are kind, then we have to prove it. We have to be what they think we are. Kyle finished his drink and set the glass down hard. I am not saying no, but we need a plan. We need money, and we need it fast. The auctions start tomorrow. I know someone, Jake said suddenly. There is a human diplomat stationed here. Her name is Lisa Monroe. She works for Earth Consulate on the upper decks. If anyone knows how to navigate galactic law, it is her. Kyle raised an eyebrow. And why would a diplomat help 2 cargo haulers buy slaves? Because she is human, Jake said. And if what you said is true, then helping people is what we do. They left the cantina and made their way to the upper levels of the station. The difference was immediate. The corridors were cleaner. The lights were brighter. The beings walking past them wore expensive clothing and carried themselves with the confidence of wealth and power. Earth's consulate was a small office near the center of the diplomatic sector. It was nothing compared to the grand embassies of the older species, but the flag of Earth hung proudly above the door. Jake felt a strange sense of pride as he approached. The receptionist was a young man with tired eyes. He looked at Jake and Kyle with suspicion. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Jake said. "But this is urgent. We need to speak with Lisa Monroe about a humanitarian emergency." The word humanitarian seemed to catch the receptionist's attention. He typed something into his terminal and nodded. "Wait here. I will see if she is available." 10 minutes later, they were sitting in a small office facing a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair. Lisa Monroe did not smile when she saw them. She looked like someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness to smile easily. "A humanitarian emergency," she said flatly. "Those are big words. What exactly do you need?" Jake told her everything, just as he had told Kyle. He talked about Vera Nix and the 47 Cathari warriors. He talked about the auctions and the gladiator pits and the mines. He talked about the promise he had made. When he finished, Lisa was silent. She studied him with those sharp eyes, looking for something. Jake did not know if she found it. "You want me to help you buy slaves," she said. "I want you to help me save lives," Jake replied. Lisa leaned back in her chair. "Purchasing slaves, even to free them, violates 17 different treaties that Earth has signed. If I help you, I could lose my job. I could face criminal charges. The diplomatic consequences could be severe." Jake felt his hope beginning to fade. "So you cannot help us?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then something changed in her expression. It was not a smile, but it was close. "I did not say that," she said. "I said it would be difficult. But I have been doing this job for 20 years, and I have learned a few tricks. There might be a way. It will not be legal, exactly. But it might work." Jake leaned forward. "Tell me." Lisa Monroe began to explain her plan, and for the first time since he had entered Hall 7, Jake felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt hope. Lisa Monroe pulled up a holographic display above her desk. Lines of legal text filled the air, written in the standard galactic language. Jake could not read most of it, but Lisa pointed to a specific section. "This is the Galactic Commerce Code," she explained. "Every species in the known galaxy follows these rules for trade. It is the one thing everyone agrees on. And buried in Section 47, Paragraph 12, there is something interesting." She zoomed in on a block of text. "This section allows for the emergency sale of damaged goods. If merchandise is proven to be defective or hazardous, the seller must offer it at a reduced price to any buyer willing to take the risk. The price reduction can be as high as 99%. Kyle frowned. "But the Cathari are not damaged. They are healthy warriors." Lisa smiled for the first time. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had learned to play the game better than anyone else. That depends on who is doing the evaluation. Medical classifications are subjective. If a licensed physician determines that the Cathari are carrying a dangerous pathogen, they become hazardous merchandise. No one will want to buy them except at scrap prices. Jake understood immediately. "You want to fake a disease." "Not fake," Lisa said. "Create a classification. There's a difference. We do not need to actually infect anyone. We just need a medical officer to issue a quarantine warning. The auction house will panic. The buyers will withdraw. And you can purchase all 47 warriors for almost nothing." It was brilliant and terrifying at the same time. Jake looked at Kyle. "Do you know anyone who could help with this?" Kyle was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then his eyes lit up. "Sam Porter. He was in my unit during my Navy days. He's a doctor now, working at the medical bay here on Terminus Station. He owes me a favor from an incident I would rather not discuss. Lisa nodded. Good. Talk to him. Convince him to issue a quarantine warning for the Cathari in Hall 7. Make up a pathogen that sounds dangerous to mammalian buyers, but harmless to reptilian species. That way, the Cathari themselves will not be at risk. And the money? Jake asked. Even at reduced prices, we still need to pay something. Lisa opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a data chip. Earth maintains a small fund for humanitarian emergencies. It is meant for disaster relief and refugee assistance. I can authorize a transfer of 20,000 credits without approval from my superiors. It is not much, but if the prices crash far enough, it should be enough. Jake took the data chip. It felt heavy in his hand, like it carried the weight of 47 lives. Why are you helping us? He asked. You said this could destroy your career. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the wall behind Jake, where a small photograph hung. It showed a younger Lisa standing next to an alien being with purple skin and large, gentle eyes. 20 years ago, I was a junior diplomat on a station much like this one. I met a slave named Tella. She was from a species called the Navi, the gentlest beings you could ever meet. She'd have been purchased by a wealthy trader who beat her every day. Lisa's voice grew softer. I wanted to help her. I tried to find legal ways to free her. But the law protected the owner, not the slave. By the time I found a solution, it was too late. Tella had died from her injuries. She looked back at Jake. I have spent 20 years trying to forget that failure. I have spent 20 years following the rules and watching terrible things happen because the rules allowed them. If there is a chance to save those warriors, I am willing to take the risk. I am tired of playing it safe. Jake nodded slowly. He understood that kind of pain. He understood what it meant to carry a failure inside you for years. We will not let you down, he said. Lisa gave him a hard look. See that you do not. Jake and Kyle left the consulate and headed straight for the medical bay. It was located in the station's central section, a large facility that served beings from dozens of different species. The waiting room was filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes, some wounded, some sick, some just getting routine checkups. They found Sam Porter in his office, surrounded by holographic patient files. He was a tall man with dark skin and a shaved head. His face showed the exhaustion of someone who worked too many hours for too little pay. Kyle Bennett, Sam said when he saw them. I never thought I would see you again. I assumed you were dead in a ditch somewhere. Kyle laughed. Close enough. I am a cargo hauler now. This is my partner, Jake Harrison. They shook hands, and Kyle explained the situation. He told Sam about the Cathari, about Vera Nix, about the plan to fake a quarantine warning. As he talked, Sam's expression grew more and more concerned. You want me to issue a false medical report, Sam said when Kyle finished. Do you understand what you are asking? I could lose my license. I could be arrested. This is not some small favor like covering for you that time on Rigel Station. I know, Kyle said. And I would not ask if it was not important. But 47 lives are at stake, Sam. They are going to die in gladiator pits and radiation mines. They are going to be worked to death by owners who see them as nothing but tools. Sam rubbed his face with both hands. He looked older than his years. Why should I care about Cathari? 6 months ago, they were the terror of the galaxy. They conquered worlds. They enslaved millions of beings themselves. Maybe this is just karma. Jake spoke for the first time. Maybe it is. Or maybe karma is what happens when someone shows mercy to those who do not deserve it. Maybe that is how the cycle breaks. Sam looked at him with surprised eyes. He had not expected such words from a simple cargo hauler. The Cathari were conquerors, Jake continued. But these warriors did not make the policies of their empire. They followed orders, just like you followed orders in the Navy. And now they are paying the price for decisions they did not make. If we let them die without trying to help, what does that say about us? Sam was quiet for a long time. He looked at the patient files floating around him. He looked at the medical equipment on his desk. He looked at the faces of his two old friends. Finally, he sighed. What kind of pathogen do you need me to invent? Kyle grinned and pulled out a datapad. Something that sounds terrifying to mammalian species, but completely harmless to reptiles. Something that will make every buyer run away screaming. Sam took the datapad and began to work. His fingers moved across the holographic keyboard, creating a fictional disease with a long scientific name and a list of horrible symptoms that would never actually occur. "I am going to regret this," Sam muttered as he worked. "Probably," Kyle agreed. "But you will be able to live with yourself. And that matters more than regret." 3 hours later, the medical bay issued an official quarantine warning for all Cathari in Hall 7 of the Galactic Slave Exchange. The pathogen was called Nexari hemorrhagic fever, and according to the report, it was extremely dangerous to any mammalian life form. The panic began almost immediately. The news of the quarantine spread through Terminus Station like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every buyer who had been interested in the Cathari warriors had withdrawn their bids. The auction house received hundreds of complaints. Traders demanded refunds for deposits they had already paid. The whole section of Hall 7 was sealed off with warning signs and emergency barriers. Jake watched from a distance as security officers in protective suits moved around the Cathari holding area. They were not really needed, since the disease did not exist, but appearances had to be maintained. Sam Porter had done excellent work. The medical report was detailed and convincing. No one questioned a dot inside the holding cells. Vera Nix kept her people calm. She had received word through the station's slave network that something was happening. A human was coming to help them. She did not know the details, but she trusted the message. She had to trust it. It was all she had. The auction house managers called an emergency meeting. Jake was not invited, but Lisa Monroe had contacts everywhere. She reported the conversation to him in real time through a secure communication channel. "They are terrified," Lisa said. "The quarantine has destroyed their reputation. Other buyers are avoiding the entire exchange now, not just Hall 7. They want to get rid of the Cathari as fast as possible. When will they sell?" Jake asked. "Tomorrow morning. Emergency auction. They are going to price the Cathari as hazardous biological waste. Anyone willing to take the risk can purchase them for almost nothing." Jake felt his heart beating faster. "How much?" "Based on what I heard, they are looking at around 300 credits per unit. For 47 units, that is roughly 14,000 credits." Jake looked at the data chip Lisa had given him. 20,000 credits for humanitarian emergencies. It was more than enough. "We can do this," he said. "Yes," Lisa replied. "But you need to be careful. The auction house is suspicious. They do not understand why anyone would want diseased slaves. You need to have a good story ready." Jake thought about this. What reason would a human have for buying 47 potentially infected alien warriors? Then it came to him. "Scientific research," he said. "I will tell them I am working for a human medical company that wants to study the disease. We need live specimens to develop a cure." It is perfectly logical. Lisa was quiet for a moment. That might actually work. Humans are known for their strange scientific interests. The auction house will believe it. The night passed slowly. Jake could not sleep. He lay in his bunk on the starbound drifter, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that could go wrong. The plan was good, but plans always failed at the worst possible moment. He had learned that lesson many times in his life. Kyle worked through the night, preparing the ship. He stripped out everything that was not essential to basic flight. Extra cargo containers, luxury items, even some of the backup navigation systems. In their place, he installed emergency life support units and created makeshift living quarters. It would not be comfortable, but it would keep 50 beings alive during the journey to human space. Morning came too quickly. Jake put on his cleanest clothes and made his way to Hall 7. The emergency auction was being held in a small room adjacent to the main hall. Only a few buyers had shown up, all of them wearing protective masks, even though they were not allowed near the quarantined area. They looked at Jake with suspicious eyes as he entered. The auctioneer was a thin alien with gray skin and multiple sets of eyes. He stood behind a podium, looking nervous and uncomfortable. "Ladies and gentlemen and beings of all classifications," he announced. "We are here today for the emergency disposal of quarantined merchandise. Lot number 47/A through 47/AV 47. Cathari specimens of various ages and conditions. Starting bid is 300 credits per unit." No one raised their hand. The auctioneer looked around the room, his many eyes blinking rapidly. 300 credits per unit. Do I have any takers? Still nothing. The other buyers had not come to purchase the Cathari. They had come to watch the spectacle and perhaps pick up other bargains if the auction house became desperate. Jake raised his hand. 300 credits per unit, he said. For all 47. I will take the entire lot. The auctioneer stared at him. Sir, are you aware that this merchandise is under medical quarantine? The Nexari hemorrhagic fever is extremely dangerous to mammalian life forms. We cannot guarantee your safety. I understand the risks, Jake said. I represent a human medical research company. We wish to study the disease and develop a cure. The specimens are essential for our work. The auctioneer looked at his colleagues. They whispered among themselves. Finally, one of them shrugged. They did not care who bought the Cathari. They just wanted them gone. Very well, the auctioneer said. 14,100 credits for 47 Cathari specimens. Do we have any other bids? Silence. Going once. Going twice. Sold to the human buyer. Jake felt a rush of emotion so strong he almost lost his balance. He had done it. He had actually done it. 47 lives, purchased for the price of a used cargo ship. The paperwork took hours. There were forms to sign, medical waivers to accept, and transfer documents to complete. The auction house made Jake sign a statement releasing them from all responsibility if the disease killed him. He signed without hesitation. Finally, they led him to the quarantine area. Security officers in protective suits opened the barriers and allowed him through. He walked down a long corridor lined with holding cells. And then he saw them. The Cathari stood in their cells, watching him approach. They were tall and proud, their scales gleaming under the harsh lights. Some of them had wounds that had not fully healed. Others bore the marks of chains and beatings. But all of them stood straight, like soldiers waiting for orders. Vera Nix was at the front of the group. When she saw Jake, something changed in her expression. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. You came, she said. The human actually came. Jake nodded. I told you I would try. The auction house has transferred ownership to me. Legally, you all belong to me now. A murmur ran through the crowd of Cathari. They looked at each other with eyes full of confusion and hope. What happens now? Vera asked. Now we get you out of here. I have a ship waiting. It is not big enough, and it will not be comfortable, but it will take us to human space. After that, you will be free. I am going to file emancipation papers the moment we reach an Earth consulate. Vera stared at him. You are going to free us? All of us? Yes. I am not interested in owning people. Nobody should own anyone. But until we reach safety, I will protect you. I promise you that. For a long moment, Vera was silent. Then she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She lowered her head in a gesture of respect. I have served many commanders in my life, she said. Generals and admirals and emperors. None of them earned my respect as quickly as you have. Whatever happens next, I will follow you. Not because you own me, but because you chose to save me when you did not have to. Jake felt uncomfortable with the gesture. He was not a leader. He was just a cargo hauler who had taken a wrong turn. But sometimes he realized that was all it took to change everything. Let us get out of here, he said. We have a long journey ahead. The Starbound drifter was never designed to carry 50 passengers. She was a cargo ship, built for boxes and crates, not living beings. But Kyle had worked miracles. Every empty space had been converted into sleeping quarters. Every storage room had been fitted with life support. The ship groaned under the weight of so many souls, but she held together. Jake stood on the bridge, watching Terminus Station shrink in the rear view screen. They had made it out without incident. The auction house had been happy to see them go. The station security had not asked questions. As far as anyone knew, a strange human had purchased disease slaves for medical research. It happened sometimes. Humans were known to be eccentric. Kyle sat in the co-pilot seat, running system checks. Life support is stable. We have enough food and water for 3 weeks if we ration carefully. It will be tight, but we can make it to Earth space. Good, Jake said. He felt exhausted. The stress of the past few days had drained everything out of him. But there was still work to do. Behind them, the sounds of Tekethery filled the ship. They talked among themselves in their native language, a series of clicks and rumbles that the translation implants could not fully capture. Jake wondered what they were saying. Were they happy? Were they scared? Were they planning to kill him and take the ship? That last thought made him uncomfortable. He had just purchased 47 of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. Any one of them could break him in half without trying. If they decided they did not want to wait for freedom, there was nothing he could do to stop them. Vera Nix appeared at the entrance to the bridge. She moved quietly for someone so large. Her scales caught the light from the control panels, shimmering with deep green colors. May I enter? She asked. Jake nodded. Of course. This is your home too, at least for now. Vera walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. For a long moment, she was silent. Jake did not interrupt her thoughts. I have been a warrior for my entire life, she finally said. I was born into the military caste. I trained to kill before I learned to read. I fought in 23 campaigns across a dozen star systems. I watched my soldiers die. I killed enemies by the thousands. That was my existence. That was all I knew. She turned to face Jake. Her eyes were ancient and tired. When the Empire fell, I thought my life was over. I thought the only thing left for me was a slow death in some arena or mine. I had accepted that fate. I was ready for it. And now? Jake asked. Now I do not know what I am. You have given me freedom, but I do not understand freedom. I do not know how to live without orders, without battles, without a purpose. Jake thought about this carefully. He was not a philosopher or a counselor. He was just a cargo hauler. But he had spent enough time alone in space to learn a few things about life. Maybe that is the point, he said. Maybe freedom means you get to choose your own purpose. Nobody tells you what to fight for anymore. You decide for yourself. Vera considered his words. And what if I choose to fight for you? Jake was surprised. For me? I am not a military leader. I do not command armies. You commanded yourself to save 47 strangers. That is a kind of leadership. A rare kind. Vera stepped closer to him. My warriors have been talking. They are confused like me, but they are also grateful. They want to know what will happen next. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a datapad. On the screen was a document he had prepared the night before. It was a mass emancipation certificate, ready to be filed the moment they reached human space. This is what happens next, he said. When we reach Earth territory, I am going to file this document with the nearest consulate. It will free all 47 of you. After that, you can go wherever you want. You can find jobs, start new lives, travel to different worlds. You will be citizens of the galactic community, not property. Vera took the datapad and studied it. Her hands, which had killed so many enemies, held the document gently, like it was made of glass. You truly intend to free us, she said. No conditions. No requirements. No debt to repay. That is right. Why? What do you gain from this? Jake shrugged. Nothing, I suppose. But that is not why I did it. I did it because it was right. I did it because you asked for help, and I could not walk away. That is all. Vera was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, more vulnerable. Among my people, there is a tradition. When a warrior owes a life debt, they pledge their service until the debt is repaid. But this debt cannot be repaid. You have saved 47 lives. There is no way to balance that scale. She handed the datapad back to Jake. So instead, I offer you something else. I offer you my choice. When we reach human space and you file this document, I will be free to leave. But I will not leave. I will stay with you, if you will have me. Not as a slave, but as a crew member. As a partner. As a friend. Jake did not know what to say. He had never expected anything like this. He had assumed the Kethari would scatter to the corners of the galaxy the moment they were freed. You do not have to do that, he said. You do not owe me anything. I know, Vera replied. That is why I am offering. Because I want to, not because I must. Kyle had been listening from his seat. He grinned and spun his chair around. Well, Jake, it looks like we are going to need a bigger ship after all. One human engineer, and however many 8-foot-tall lizard warriors want to stick around. We could start our own mercenary company. Vera made a sound that might have been a laugh. We are not mercenaries. We are warriors. There is a difference. Okay, warrior company. Whatever you want to call it. The starbound drifter continued its journey through the dark spaces between stars. In the cargo holds below, 47 Kethari warriors settled into their makeshift quarters and began to dream of futures they had never imagined. Some would leave when they reached human space. Others would stay. But all of them would remember the human who had purchased their freedom when he had every reason not to. Word traveled fast in the galaxy. By the time Jake reached the Earth consulate, the story had already spread through 100 slave networks on a dozen stations. A human had bought 47 Kethari warriors and freed them without hesitation. A human had risked everything to save beings he did not know in auction houses across known space. Enslaved beings began to watch for human buyers. They waited and hoped and prayed for the chance to speak 4 simple words. Please purchase us, human. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a single cargo ship carried the first seeds of something new. Not an empire built on conquest, but something better. A family built on choice. A future built on kindness. Jake Harrison looked out at the stars and smiled. He had not planned to change the course of his life that morning when he walked into Hall 7. But sometimes the best things in life were the things nobody planned. The journey was just beginning.